I'm going to start the conversation with a topic that I get asked all the time, which is carbon offsets. Everyone's going to get rich with carbon offsets, and we get approached by companies relentlessly looking for our producers' contacts because they're going to go and make those producers rich by signing them up for 5 years and all the carbon they're going to capture. So I don't know, Steve. Maybe we'll start with you. You seem like a man of many words, and I'm sure you've thought about this.
Okay, carbon credits, carbon offsets. I first heard about this back in 2008. I was dealing with a company that said they were going to be selling these offsets, and they had done a bunch of research, and they were actually giving paychecks to the grain farmers, and they were backdating to 2008 at the time. Or sorry, 2002. So I'm sitting there at 2008 going, that's a lot. I started expanding in 2002, and now I'm at 3,500 acres. This is going to be a big check for backdating all these years. I'm like, where's my money? I'm still waiting. Right? They didn't do any science behind grazing. They couldn't quantify it. So I know I am doing a much better job than I'm going to say any grain farmer out there. But I'm not getting paid for it. So am I holding my breath still? Not a chance. The reason I'm putting carbon in the ground, though, is not to get a little paycheck on carbon credits. It's to build my water holding capacity and improve my soil. I make more profit that way. I will make way more money by doing this for me than it is for doing it for some government payout that I don't really believe in anyway. So I'm not holding my breath for it anymore. If it ever comes to it, great. But I'm not holding my breath.
My thoughts are pretty similar to Steve's. I sat down with my own farm personally with a company that was doing carbon verification, and we had a great meeting, 3 hours long. They were so curious, and then at the end of it they said, well, you've done too much good for too long. We're not interested in your carbon. You've already sequestered the cheap carbon that we want to take advantage of. And I thought, well, this is the stupidest thing I have ever heard of. You're taking the influencers and you're disincentivizing them. You're going to slow the movement down. One thing I will say that the last probably 6 months, PepsiCo and General Mills, they are working on carbon insets, which is essentially rewarding producers that are doing less carbon intensive practices, which is I think an absolute key. Why put it up there and worry about sequestering it? Why not just focus on the producers that are actually doing correct practices and try and incentivize them that way? And hopefully that in my opinion, that's the best path forward from a carbon standpoint. Carbon's a really tough thing to measure, especially accurately, and a ton of different practices can have a ton of different results. So, and there's no guarantee you're going to get anything out of it. So you got to follow.
I want to add to that. So what's incorrect about what that company told you, that you've already done all the hard work and you've already got all the easy carbon. I had this conversation with Dr. Alan Williams, and I think, Steve, you reminded me of it when you talked about, there's way more opportunity to make more soil organic matter below the soil and then above. So I said to Alan, I said, it occurs to me that being able to create soil organic matter is like infinite. And he had this funny smile, and he's like, you're absolutely right. And then he explained to me his approach to that is that whether you're adding soil organic matter as residue above the soil, but think about once you get to the point where your soil biological health is actually really ramping, then you can continue to add soil organic matter at an increased rate almost forever. Because think of how deep the soil was eons ago when we had giant trees and reptiles running around. And so I don't think there's any cap on being able to add soil organic carbon or soil organic matter at almost an exponential rate. So what the companies don't understand is that the producers that have already got their system going are the ones that are probably going to add the most for the longest.
So I guess if there's any questions about carbon, you can fire them away. It's one of the more least interesting things that I like to talk about. But if anyone's got any questions or on any of the topics that we've covered today, raise your hand, fire away. Otherwise, I'm gonna keep moderating and ask these guys questions that I'm actually curious about. Yeah.
I just
Okay, as long as you promise that. I'll go first. I hate the term probiotics. I'm like, there's biology and that's it, and it works in a balance. I always say I use some biologicals on my farm. If all that biology was naturally supposed to be there anyway, I think the first question you should be asking yourself is, why isn't it there now? And if I'm just adding a biology that's going to help me in the short term and have no effect in the long term, how is it any better than any other input out there? So I think the first question, and it's always an important one, is, well, why the hell is it not there already? But, Steve?
Yeah, same thing. If you build it, they will come, right? I mean, there's no sense adding something if your system isn't, if they're not there already, your system's not ready for it, right? So you start working on the whole system, and the biology moves in, the ecosystem rebuilds. We just got to kind of step out of the way and let nature work. Because honestly, if we were gone, this would be an amazing planet, right? It would fix itself. Everybody talks about we have to save the world. No, we should save ourselves, because one of these days the Earth's just going to say, I'm done with you, and we're going to be gone. So,
I think that there's an opportunity for bridge products and processes. That's how I look at things like probiotics, or even the company that you mentioned. I've actually met with their whole team. I think that sometimes if you want to make a transition from a conventional to a regenerative system, that there is either pieces of equipment or technology or products that will help you get over the bridge. So I call them bridge products. And I just think also to be really careful for me and for any of the rest of us to say, like, to Steve's point, like, why isn't it already there? Well, maybe there's so much degradation that to get where it needs to be, that some type of product or service or equipment or probiotic might help, but I think it should be short term, and I think it should only be a bridge to get to where you want to go.
so you remember the graph that you showed right at the very beginning of the ag business taking most of the money? One of the things that I always ask, right, if you need to buy something in a box, a bag, or a bottle, okay, what are they claiming it does? And then ask yourself one more question. What else does it do? Right? I always ask that. And usually in the end, I don't buy it. Right? But I mean, there are some products. I mean, I buy seed, right? I have to buy some fuel, right? We need ag business. I'm not totally dissing ag business. There's some stuff we need. We need to buy some equipment. But be careful. They're good at marketing. They're salesmen. They're really good salesmen, right? We need some of the things, but we don't need all of it. Be careful what you're buying, and what else does it do?
Follow the money, right? And that goes for you when you're looking at me, like what value as a consultant am I actually bringing? And follow the money, because those elements that we saw on one of the first charts about that are free, like, how do we get at more of those? And so I think that's one of the things I caution myself with. And I'll give you another example. There's a fellow I'm working with that's trying to create a way to cut basically sod in your pasture and plant a seed underneath that sod, where the seed can then germinate and the sod can come back. And I was talking with two of the folks that were on some of that research that you showed, Blaine and Michael. And I was talking to them about this piece of equipment, and Blaine looked at me and he pushed me into a corner really quick, and he's like, well, why would you need to add anything? Like, why don't you use the regenerative system to bring out what should already be there? And he's probably right. At the same time, if you have a really worn out pasture, maybe there is a way to use it as a bridge to get to where you want to go if the juice is worth the squeeze.
So I'll speak on the biologicals. Are you talking from like a grain farming perspective or crop farming? One thing that I get peeved off about biologicals, and again, I've used them as a bridge product. I don't use as many anymore, but I've tried them. I get the concept. Something that is not explained well enough to producers, in my opinion, is we're dealing with living organisms. And living organisms can be fickle. How are they transported? What temperature is it stored? What temperature is when you're applying it? What's the crop it's going on? What was the rotation? What's there for insecticide beforehand? What's there for residual in the soil? No salesman ever asks those questions. They just say, put it in the tank and put it on, and you're going to get 5 bushels more. That is not how living biology works. It is very, very tough to show up in replicated trials. I would say, first and foremost, you have to understand and believe the concept, or else don't use it. Because if you believe and understand the concept, you will understand and notice that these are fickle little organisms, and application and care definitely matters.
I'll ask my own question. To add to it all, because it was my favorite answer I've heard to the question so far, is these companies, they're all picking 2 or 3, whatever, microbes that they're trying to sell to you, they're trying to peddle to you. These 3 are the ones that are going to fix your ground. When in reality, there's billions of organisms in the soil. How do you pick 3 that are going to...
So a tablespoon of soil has more organisms than people on planet Earth. It'd be the equivalent to an alien dropping a human from the sky. One person that's going to fix all of Earth's problems. These are complex ecosystems. Yeah.
There's no magic bullet.
No magic bullet.
Which is why, and I'll go back to the framework because I think it's so helpful. I would ask myself, well, where in the 634 does that product actually address one of those to make it better as part of an entire ecosystem when it's 1 in a billion?
Got anything else to add to that? Nope. Any follow-ups to that, or other topics you guys want to cover? No? Okay.
Steve, last winter you was talking about his drop in winter grazing program, and he needed to start applying fertilizer. I guess he had stopped using fertilizer.
Do I remember that? What do you remember? Who that was?
It was with Graham.
Oh, Graham Finn.
I was just wondering because you're talking about a really polyculture crop now, Joe, and from what I understood, he used to do that, but he has gone away from it now.
There can be a bit of a lull. So when you come into cover crops and polycultures, right, there can be a little bit of a lull as the biology starts to tie up some of the nutrients as well, because they're building their bodies, they're building a system, but it kicks back into gear, right? Some people have said 3 to 4 years, some people say 5 to 6.
It would be good for 5 years and then you'll have a fall and then it starts rolling.
I haven't always seen it. There's been a couple times, but I mean, it comes down to weather too, right? Yes, on a dry year, of course I'm going to have a lull. But honestly, I haven't seen the lull. So I just, it's good to have different perspectives on there. I didn't necessarily agree with him, but he was my guest. I'm not going to be rude. Yeah, it's good to hear. Yeah, this is not a perfect system. Like, it's not a magic bullet. We're not going to just say, do this, and it's going to make everything better, right? The context. Everybody's land is different. Everybody's system is different. There's so much variable. I work with a fellow by the name of Joe Salatin, and I love one of his analogies is you will never be a professional farmer. Never, right? If you're a professional basketball player, how many free throws have you taken in your career? Right? Like hundreds of thousands of free throws, right? No wind, the same basket, the same height, the same, shape, the same size, right? And you're a professional. How many crops are you going to grow in your lifetime that are the same with no variables? Like none, ever. So don't ever expect to be a professional. It's going to be different. And that's where observation comes in. And you try one way, you try something else. So, sometimes it's going to work, better than you expected, and sometimes it's not, right? I've had lots of failures, or experiments that didn't work out the way I thought they would. Learning opportunities. So, yeah. I haven't really seen that lull, but, everybody has a different perspective, right? You guys anything?
And I guess I'm not totally familiar with the context, but it was like polycropping annuals, like year on year on year. Yeah, so I know the lull that he's talking about. So, and I try and stress to our producers, some of them, it's just the context of their farm, they're not able to. But going in with the exact same blend year on year on year, we're stimulating the same biology. We're going after the same minerals the same time of year. It's turning it into obviously not a monoculture, but a system that's making the same demands on the same biology, the same elements at the same time of year. So I always like the idea, and what we do on our farm, and what I try and stress. We just had this conversation at lunch actually, is if you're using a multi-species cover crop in an annual system, I mean, stimulating that biology, giving that biology a kickstart. And what I like to do is go in with something that's really expensive to grow. Because if I can take something that's really expensive to grow, ideally the payoff's high, but I can cut my fertility rates or whatever rates, disease, fungicide, substantially. So I like not going annual polycrop on annual polycrop. I like utilizing the annual polycrop as a tool on my farm. So going into next year, I'm set up better for my cash crop. And that's what works in my system and what I try and preach to our growers for sure.
Even though it's a year-over-year polycrop, that's still a prescribed pattern that you're following. And it doesn't follow the rule of disruption, which I think is what you just said, right? Is you actually have to plan a disruption into that. Your disruption was that high-value crop in the 1 year where you can probably get some of the value that you've added, not extracted, but added to the soil. So you've planned a disruption, and then you go to something different. But that's what I hear lots. I've heard other consultants tell me that I work with that often farmers and ranchers say, well, just tell me what to do. Just tell me what to apply. They want a prescription, but you actually have to understand your context and then make those planned disruptions, and that's what will allow your system to work as an ecosystem.
This is an opportunity to get them back. Okay, we're going to switch seats. Everybody switch seats.
Oh, no. Wait. No, I'm uncomfortable.
Plan disruption.
That's awesome.
Revenge is sweet.
All right, any other topics? Okay, I got one for you guys. I was telling both you our grain budget looks like shit this year. We're going to do something that we've never done, which is take out a big old loan, likely take out a big old loan and get some grassers and price insure. I'm wondering, in your guys' experience, best practices for backgrounding grassers on, we're going to use cover crops, but just on land in general.
I need more time to think. I'm all thrown off.
So I'm a custom grazer. I don't buy and sell yearlings. What I can give you some advice on maybe is how to manage them, right? I mean, my favorite type of animal to bring in is actually bred heifers, because bred heifers they pay like cows. We can treat them like cows, but they pay like yearlings. Yearlings naturally, just the way the market is skewed, you make more money running yearlings. However, yearlings can sometimes have more headaches because you get some crazy psycho ones in there that are jumping fences. Now, your bred heifers, usually the owners have taken out all the crazy psycho ones because they're going to be calving these, right? So they're in the feedlot. Those are what come with the yearlings. So if you're buying yearlings, you're going to have some high headers, or unless you've picked through them, and then you got some more headaches. So bringing them in, setting them up, crucial on how you bring them in to keep them calm. Bring them into a steel set of corrals, let them sit, let them until somebody's laying down and everybody's calm. I train them to electric fence in the steel corrals, right? Because and I use the bungee cord now, so they can't knock it over ever, right? It just stretches and pops back up. Then I let them out into a watering area, nice and calm. Let them relax. Let them learn more about electric fence in there, but have a much more secure paddock. Then I start grazing. Usually the first day we strip graze, to move them multiple times that day so they get used to it really quick. And by that first or second paddock, they're used to electric fence and they're calm, and now we're grazing for the season, right? If you come in and just turn them out into a big paddock and then you start rotating them after, every 3 days, you're into a month and a month or more of trying to get these animals trained. So that crucial to bring them in at a certain time. I mean, it'll save you so much headache to do that extra work right at the beginning, and it saves you so much time later. So I don't know if that helped, but
A couple things. So to build on that, I brought in somebody else's cattle into a ranch environment that if they got out, they were on a couple million acres of land without fences, and they'd end up in Banff National Park, literally. So I would do the same thing. I'd give them, 1 day's worth of grass for 2 days in a very confined area, and everybody figured out how hot the fence was. And I put the water right in the very corner, so they actually had to go in. Even when there was 100, they had to take turns, and everybody got zapped. And I had a back fence to that, so I like the idea of the bungee cord. But I knew someone was going to jump or go under or whatever, so they would get out into the next short strip. But by the end of that second day, pretty well everybody had figured out what hot fence was, and then I moved them every 48 hours, so they got pretty good. And I also had dogs that could work good. So, so a couple other things more on the business side. So one, the fact that you can create some, basically by buying insurance, you're hedging, right? Like you've got, so you're hedging, so that's helpful. I would, like bred heifers are 1,000-pound-ish animals, but they're not like a large cow. I agree with that. But I would wonder what your other goals are. So, like, there's a lot of risk in the cattle market right now because people are, in the U.S. and in Canada, people are starting to think the same thing. So there's going to be more pressure on buying those stocker cattle, for sure. And so, is it soil health you're trying to get at? Or if there's people looking for grass, back to the, like maybe there's neighbors that have the right class of cattle that you can charge a daily fee, but you can get all the biology for that and not have the risk. But I think you always got to do your homework to figure out is the risk worth it? And the fact that you can hedge, I think probably helps de-risk that to some degree.
I wouldn't do it without the price insurance. I'd be an idiot thinking I'd be the one getting rich in the cattle industry when so many have thought that before.
I'll add to the risk factor. Every once in a while, I get the urge that I should go buy some cattle, and then a year like this year where hay is $200 a bale, and I correct myself. One of the biggest reasons why I'm still a custom grazer, I've been custom grazing for over 20 years, something called the Animal Keepers Act. If you don't know what it is, look it up. I basically have a lien of possession on the animals that I manage, and if a customer doesn't pay me, I basically can take them to the auction mart, sell them, and I get my fees. My lien comes before the banks, which the banks don't like at all, but I appreciate it. It's the best insurance program I could ever do, and I pay no premiums, nothing. It's a lien of possession only, though. If I let them take the cattle home, I lose my lien. So I charge per head per day in advance.
What do you charge per head per day?
It varies depending on the class and weight or whatever. But I can, if anybody wants, I can send my contract to you. So I give that out freely. Yeah, if I was to let them take the animals home, like if I was to pay by the weight of gain, well, to get the last check for sure, they have to go home first. And if they aren't happy and they say, well, no, I'm not paying you, I'm out. But so basically, like for example, the month of June, I get paid in advance for the month of June. So that on the day they get shipped out, all the fees have to be paid. And then they can take them home. But if they haven't paid their fees, their animals don't go home. So it's the best insurance.
The only other way that you could circumvent that, which would cost you, is if you had your own weigh system, which is a lot more handling and infrastructure costs to own that. But then you could weigh them out and say, oh, well, I'm going to hold them at home until you pay me. Or I'm going to weigh them and they're going to the auction market unless you show up with a check. That's interesting.
It used to be called the Livery and Stable Keepers Act, but about 10 years ago they upgraded it to the Animal Keepers Act. Yeah, the Livery and Stable Keepers Act, I still used it back then. Like it was at first put in like the 1800s. One of the duties that I had to perform on a monthly basis was to wash out the feed bunks with mercury bichloride or something. Yeah, it was old. It needed to be updated. So I'm glad I don't have to do that.
If you're interested in finding out more about like cattle marketing and the cattle market, another shameless plug is Understanding Ag is putting on a workshop March 4th and 5th in Kansas City, and it's got three what I think are the leading experts. One of the guys, what did we call him? He's like the Rain Man of cattle marketing. Like, it's unbelievable, but he talks with this Oklahoma accent, so it's kind of hard to understand him. But I'm going to it. It's in Kansas City, and it's 2 days, and I'm looking forward to what I can learn about cattle marketing because there's so much interest now in trying to take advantage of this hot market. March 4th and 5th, Kansas City.
I'm going to Kansas City early March.
You guys should carpool.
I'm going to meet you there, and then we're going to trade spots at the table.
7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th, I'm there.
Okay. Well, 4th and 5th, go to Kansas City.
Is that Doug Ferguson there then? Or is it Wally Olson?
It's Burke Tykert that used to run the whole Deseret Ranches. It is Kent Donica, who's the Rain Man of Cattle, and Dr. Alan Williams. And there's going to be some really cool tools that they developed that you can actually plug numbers in and help you to look at what your risk is and your buy and sell numbers. So it's $999 US, and there's special rates on the rooms as well. Yeah, if you want. Bring your bedroll. I get the bed, you get the floor.
I got to say something I'm so grateful for. Usually when I come to Alberta and talking with producers, and I tell them all of our perimeter fencing is electric fence, and I've never even built a barbed wire fence. They look at me like I grew a third eye on my forehead. So is it ever nice talking to you guys? I feel like I'm back at home.
I wouldn't build never build a perimeter fence unless it's hot. Period.
We got one at the back, but then we're coming right here.
There's a bit of an argument in the grazing world about how much you should be taking in the rotational grazing system. Like, some guys are now saying they want to keep it all the way to the ground, whereas there's the leave 50 or leave 30% ground for the rest kind of thing. What's your perspective on that, both for a perennial grazing system and cover crop?
So I'll touch on the annual side, and I'll pass it to these guys. A really good friend of mine, Lauren, you might even have heard of him, Ryan Boyd. You recognize the name? So Ryan, he's been doing this longer than I, and he was a mentor of mine. Now he's just a really good friend. Him and I have a fundamental disagreement of exactly this. His argument is in an annual. Well, I'll start with my argument because I always want to be fair to me first. I like the take half, leave half. I love the residue on the soil. If I can balance my seed end, that is cover. I think my plants are going to recover quicker, but most of your biology is sitting right there, and that's where it's most active. If I can give it a digestible, balanced carbon and nitrogen, I'm going to feed that biology. I'm going to turn that residue over, and that's my goal. So I like the take half, leave half. I like the high stocking density, so I can actually achieve that. In Ryan's opinion, he says on an annual system, which is perennials different, he says that is an absolute waste. He said, take it all. It's an annual crop. I mean, I think he's not taking it right down to black dirt. Like, he would like some leaf matter there so that those plants can recover quicker. But in his opinion, his perennial system's different. Like, they try and achieve some trampling and some cover. But in the annual, he tries to take absolutely as much as he can because he says those annual plants, it may be slower, but they're going to recover with a lot more vigor than something perennial. So two different schools of thought. Which one's right? I ain't changing and Ryan's not changing. So maybe we're both right.
I think about this in terms of the 6-3-4 framework. So I don't know if it's take half, leave half, or take 70 and leave 30. But when I think about the rule, first of all, like ensuring that there's armor there, keeping living root in the soil. I think all of us talked about the effect of trampling and the biological shedding that can happen. Having live plants actually still growing right next to the ground that a result of the trampling effect is highly important. And when you think about the energy cycle and having more live leaf that is able to allow that rest and recovery to happen, even with an annual, I actually think there's more value. And then you plan in your rest and recovery on more of an annual type focus rather than a perennial. And with I don't think it's that much different with perennial.
I could make us switch chairs again. They're both right, they're both wrong. Right? If you're doing the same thing all the time, you'll get stagnant. Yeah. Right? Change is a tool, right? Disruption is a tool. So sometimes I take it all. Sometimes I leave half of it. Sometimes I leave 80% of it. Right? It depends on the paddock, it depends on the conditions, it depends on the weather, right? What happened last year. Right? Every time I come up to graze a paddock, I look at it and I go, okay, what am I grazing for right now? I could be grazing for the animal, right? What's the best right now for the animal, right? We need gains. Maybe it's hot out. Maybe it's too cool out. Why am I moving right now? Or I could be moving for the land. Okay, we had a drought last year. I want to put back lots of residue. I'm going to, try and heal this land. I'm moving for the land this time, so I might leave a different amount. Maybe I'm moving for the people, right? Maybe I need to manage for the people. I did that here even last summer. I had a manager that was running, and he was busy, running hard. Like he was at the point of doing too much. Our fencer quit on us, and I just said, you know what? Graze all 3 of these together this time. Open up all 3 gates. That gives you 6 days. Okay, I was managing for the people. Did I wreck the pasture? No. Did I get optimal trampling that I want to? No. But I managed for the people that time. So if somebody's giving you a recipe, they're wrong, right? None of this is a recipe. This is a science with an artistic flair. Or maybe it's an art with some science thrown in. Okay, but it's never a recipe. So yeah, they're both wrong, they're both right. I do it all, and I do it differently just about every time.
So context, adaptation, plan disruption. I think that's the comprehensive answer.
I just said you're wrong, didn't I?
No, then you said he was right.
Ryan's right, and you're right, and you're wrong, and he's right. Yeah.
Question down here.
So for the fencer, our whole day driving through Alberta yesterday, I didn't see a single barbed wire fence with a drop. You drive out to BC and you won't see a single barbed wire fence without drops. Why don't they?
I don't even know what, I'm so unfamiliar with barbed wire fence, I don't know what the hell you're talking about.
So droppers are stays, that means,
Oh, a stake. Oh, that sure messes with electric fencing. Yeah. Yeah, no, I hate those stays. Yeah, the metal ones, yeah, because you're constantly, yeah. One of the things they promote lots is the offset, right? I mean, if you got a barbed wire fence, you want to put electricity around it, like even if it's an old cruddy barbed wire fence, the cheapest fix for me is to put an offset on it, right? As long as that barbed wire is standing, that's the visual barrier. The electricity running through it is the actual, fence to keep my animals in. That's where electricity comes in.
Yeah, well, so that's where the psychological and the physical effect of electricity becomes really important. I don't know, maybe droppers could be for snow. Like they were more popular, I don't know, like 20, 30, 40 years ago. But I think one of the other cheap solutions to converting barbed wire into electric is just drill a hole through the post and run your hot wire through that, because that's your insulator and your supporter. And you run it between the 3rd and 4th wire. You tighten up your barbed wires, and then you've got a perimeter fence that's both a physical and a hot barrier.
I've seen your video when it was raining and you're testing the hot wire and you say it doesn't ground. Mine all ground. I don't know what I'm doing wrong.
Yeah, I get a lot of flack over that on social media. I put a post up or a picture up, and I don't even realize that there's a piece, barbed wire that's electric. I'm just talking about something else, and oh my gosh, the flack I get out of that. You're not allowed to electrify barbed wire, and you can't use any insulators. That's like illegal.
But I'm not heating up the barbed wire. I drill a hole and put a high tensile wire through, and then you don't have plastic, you don't have offsets, you don't have all that, and you lose a little bit when it rains, and then as soon as it dries out, anyways.
Where are you located? You don't get rain? Okay, see, that's a big difference. Okay, well, in a drier environment, I mean, I'm in a medium environment, I think, right? I get 15 inches of rainfall in a season. I got a friend who says that they get 6 days of precipitation a year, right? It's a pretty dry environment. So if I was in Quebec, southern Quebec, where they get 55 inches of rainfall, I would need insulators all the time. But where I'm at, I can get enough juice through my fence. I don't power that much fence. Like, I don't power the whole farm. I power what I need, and that's it. Without insulators, what I save on is my maintenance. Because as soon as I put a plastic insulator out there, the wildlife do damage all winter long on my fences. If I have a wood post with a 2.5-inch barb staple holding it on, very little damage in the winter. My spring setup is a lot quicker. And then I run 2 miles of fence when the fencer says it can run 30, right? And I'll run it through the second bottom barbed wire, right, when it's dry. As soon as it's wet, well, that's going to short out quite a bit, so I don't hook that one up. But if I run a little bit of power through barbed wire fences when I can, the cattle respect barbed wire fences, even when there's no juice, right? There's no reaching through my fences. Nobody ever does because they're scared because it might be hot. And I'm going to say 10% of my barbed wire fences actually have some heat in it. The rest don't, but they don't reach through any of them because they're trained to that. It's just a matter of training them. Cattle won't rub on my pickup truck. Middle of the field, they won't rub on my pickup truck because once in a while, I'll back it into an electric fence and jump out. They come up to rub on it. All of a sudden, it's an electric truck. Okay? You do that a couple times, the herd comes up and starts licking the salt off your truck. Yeah, they stop pretty quick. Right? It's amazing what power can do to train a herd. Yeah, plastic handles are handy. Or leave the door open and jump in.
Any other questions? Do you want to draw?
Yeah, let's do the draw. So
Are you going to make me read people's names?
I'll hold the bucket too. I'll ban a white.
Here we go. You pick.
Whoa.
Oh, now he's got to read it out.
What am I? Okay. Oh, man.
Yeah, hey, easy on the drone.
Okay, Brad Vanuwerk? Vanuwerk? I got it right the second time.
Nice.
Did you want to give those understanding A?
Sure. Let's do that. No, you're reading.
Oh, good. Travis Morrison. I'm not sure which, if you're getting a covers and go hat or an understanding egg. Travis? How many you got? Okay, we got two more.
Okay.
Yep, we're done.
Adam Jones.
Adam Jones. Yeah.
There's 3 here, so.
Oh, okay. I'll pull out another one here. Danielle Patry. Last one.
Oh, Bettina? How'd you say that?
She's got her hand up.
Oh, nice.
She's married to the first
Yeah. Whoops. Okay, if we don't have any other questions, I'm going to get the last question for these guys. I guess first and foremost, thanks everyone for coming. Another round of applause for Keegan for planning this. It was an amazing day. So quite often, and I'm sure you guys are the same, you've had this question before, but somebody comes up, first time hearing about soil health, plant diversity, and they maybe caught 10% of it, they're excited, but they are lost. Where do I go? What's my first step? I know context is going to be very important as to what's on their farm and what resources they have accessible to them, but what do you say to somebody, what's the first steps that I can take to start going down this path?
University of Google. YouTube? Yeah, YouTube. There is so much information out there now. I mean, if it's, like I get that question all the time. First thing I start doing, I mean, because it's me, I send them a link to all my articles on the Canadian Cattleman, a YouTube page, Facebook page. There's so many different places that you can find this stuff now on YouTube. Yeah, that's where you go. I mean, there's all sorts of schools. Private industry teaches this, not academia. You know, I went to academia a long time ago and learned basically I learned what was being done and what has been done in the past, not what should be being done. Okay, they're training us to be future consumers of products. I want somebody to teach me how to think, teach me how to, you know, change that, get that mindset shift and start thinking for myself and start thinking for my farm. There's numerous schools that I recommend, Ranching for Profit, Holistic Management. Yep. There's lots of schools. I partner with Joel Salton with the Stockman Grass Farmer. They have 5 or 6 different schools that you can take from there. Understanding Ag, there's all sorts of places where you can go out and learn some really good information. It's all private industry, right? It is.
I looked up the other day, the only academic institution in Canada that I know is doing anything is Thompson River University. They have a regenerative agriculture diploma, I think it is. And I looked at it and I was like, okay, well, at least they're at least they're doing something.
They hired me.
Oh,
I went out there and taught.
nice. So that's probably a good program, even if Steve's there. No, and so then that's good that you're taking that experience to that level, because I've been pushing it. Like, I'm a former, old college person, and it's like I couldn't get it past the academic mindset. All those ones that you mentioned are ones, like even some of my colleagues at Understanding Ag have just got back from the Ranching for Profit, for example. So that's a good one. Chico State has some good stuff that they do there in terms of training. And then shameless plug again from my organization, the Soil Health Academy. So it's a 3-day course. So you can go to that course. It's one of the best places to start because you're going to get in front of people that are doing this for a living, both as farmers and ranchers, but also as consultants and educators. And then I would say find a group that you could become part of, a WhatsApp group or a soil health, some kind of group, or like some kind of peer group that you can start to engage in, and you can just listen and learn from people that are doing it. I think that's another really good place to go, because almost everybody, if not everybody in those groups, they're part of that group because they want to learn and they want to share what they're learning, and no one there is selling anything.
Yeah, I'll just pretty much make the same points these guys made. Like 10 years ago when we were going to conferences like this, a big conference used to be how many people is in this room right now, which really speaks to the movement that's going on. Best thing I did was the exercise that you forced upon us, which is sit with somebody that you don't know, shake their hand, talk about their farm. Every one of you, whether you like it or not, is here for a reason, and that reason is that something has got you here to this point, whether it's change you want to see on the farm, whether it's interest in cover crops or grazing. Every farm has a story, and you can learn from every single one, so networking is the most important. The other thing I would say, Steve talked about YouTube and Google. Another great one for being on the farm, it's just my learning just skyrocketed, is podcasts, because you can go about your day with podcasts in your ear, driving the tractor, driving a car. There's some really, really great podcasts out there. And I'll give a shameless plug too. When we started Covers & Co., it was very frustrating that there was no centralized database for all this understanding. And what we strive to do is lead with education. So we have book recommendations, YouTube recommendations, documentaries, information on mycorrhizal fungi, carbon and nitrogen, intercropping, soil testing. If you guys want to go on the website, you can literally spend weeks on there, and we just try and keep it update and the information relevant. So there's just such a ton of good resources out there, and yeah, stay curious, get a network, and keep talking and trying things on your farm. Even if it's trying fall rye as a fall seeded cover crop, it's just an excellent way to start to capture sunlight. But try it, learn from other people, and do a good job networking. Stay curious. That's my best advice. So
You should get a t-shirt. Fall rye is the gateway drug to regenerative agriculture.
that's true. That's how I started. So again, thank you very, very much for coming. Thank you, Keegan, for planning it. Thank you guys for coming on board. Safe travels home. If you guys are staying here, I'll see you at the blackjack table. Thanks a lot.